Welcome in, get comfortable, and let your mind wander back to a world that would feel both familiar and completely strange. Imagine waking up just as the first light begins to reach across the rooftops of a small village. There are no cars passing outside, no humming refrigerators, and certainly no supermarket waiting just down the road. If you wanted breakfast, there was no quick trip to buy eggs or bread. In fact, the very idea of buying all your food in one place would have sounded almost magical. For most of history, ordinary people lived in a world where food didn't come from shelves. It came from fields, gardens, forests, rivers, and the hard work of people they knew by name. Every loaf of bread, every bowl of soup, and every piece of cheese had a story behind it, often involving weeks or even months of careful labor. Today, we hardly think about where dinner comes from. We walk into a brightly lit store, push a shopping cart down neat aisles, and choose between dozens of kinds of bread. Some are fresh, some are frozen, some promise extra seeds, while others claim to have been baked that very morning. If one shelf is empty, another one is waiting nearby. A person from the Middle Ages might find this more amazing than a castle made of gold. Not because the bread is fancy, but because there is just so much of it. For most ordinary families hundreds of years ago, there was no endless choice. Food was whatever the land was willing to give. Nature decided the menu far more often than people did. If spring was cold, crops grew slowly. If summer was dry, vegetables struggled. If heavy rain flooded the fields, everyone noticed. The weather wasn't something to complain about while checking a phone app. It was the difference between a full stomach and an empty one. This meant people paid close attention to the seasons. They watched the sky, the wind, the rain, and even the behavior of animals. Every small sign could mean something for the harvest still months away. The funny thing is that weather forecasts did exist, just in a much less reliable form. Instead of satellites, people often looked at clouds, birds, old sayings, or that one neighbor who claimed his aching knee could predict rain better than anyone else. Sometimes he was even right. Almost every village worked like its own little food system. Instead of giant companies moving food across continents, neighbors depended on each other. One family grew barley. Another kept sheep. Someone else baked bread. Another made cheese. A fisherman brought his catch from the nearby river. Everyone had a part to play. This did not mean everyone was completely self-sufficient. Far from it. Most people traded with others whenever they could. But those trades happened within a much smaller world than ours. A journey of 20 miles could feel like a major trip. That may sound surprising today. After all, many people now travel farther than that just going to work. But before trains, cars, or paved highways, moving food was slow, expensive, and tiring. Imagine carrying heavy sacks of grain over muddy roads with nothing but a horse and wagon. Every extra mile meant more time, more effort, and more cost. Fresh food spoiled quickly, especially during warm weather. Because of this, people mostly ate what grew nearby. If your village had apple trees, apples became part of life. If your land grew oats better than wheat, then oats filled many meals. If the nearby river was rich with fish, fish appeared on the table more often. People didn't expect strawberries in winter or oranges from another country. They expected whatever happened to be ready. This close connection between people and food also meant almost everyone understood how food was made. Children watched grain being planted. They helped gather vegetables. They carried water, picked berries, collected eggs, or chased stubborn chickens that clearly had their own plans for the day. Anyone who has ever tried catching a chicken knows that this is not always a short adventure. Adults spent huge parts of the year growing, repairing, digging, harvesting, storing, drying, or preserving food. There was always another job waiting. Food wasn't just something you bought. It was something you worked for. Even people living in towns stayed closely connected to farming. Many families kept small gardens behind their homes. Some owned chickens. Others had a pig. Larger towns held regular markets where nearby farmers brought whatever they had harvested. The distance between farm and table remained surprisingly short. Modern supply chains stretch across oceans. A single meal today might include rice from Asia, fruit from South America, spices from India, cheese from France, and coffee from Africa. Centuries ago, dinner usually came from somewhere close enough that you could walk there. This also meant food looked different throughout the year. In late summer, tables could seem wonderfully full. Fresh vegetables arrived every day. Fruit ripened in orchards. Milk was plentiful. Herbs filled gardens with color and smell. Winter painted a very different picture. Fresh vegetables became rare. Fruit was carefully stored or dried. Meat was often salted. Bread depended on grain saved from the last harvest. Meals became simpler, but people had prepared for this all year. Planning ahead wasn't a hobby. It was survival. One failed harvest could create problems that lasted for months. Families carefully measured how much grain they had left. Every loaf of bread mattered. Every handful of beans counted. Waste was almost unthinkable. A stale piece of bread could become soup. Old vegetables could become stew. Animal fat could be saved for cooking. Nothing useful disappeared if it could still fill someone's stomach. This careful way of living may seem difficult to us, but it also created a deep respect for food. People knew exactly how much work stood behind every meal. They had planted the seeds, pulled the weeds, carried the water, gathered the harvest, and spent hours preparing it. There were no mystery ingredients. There were no frozen dinners. And there was certainly no late-night snack delivery arriving at the door because someone suddenly wanted honey cakes after sunset. If you forgot an ingredient, the solution was not to drive to the nearest store. The solution was usually, well, I suppose we're not having that today. As the sun slowly set over the village, families gathered around simple tables. The meal might not have been exciting by modern standards, but it represented months of effort, hope, and patience. Every bite reminded them that food was never guaranteed. It came from the land, from the seasons, and from the steady hands of ordinary people who worked together to keep everyone fed. And that simple truth shaped daily life for thousands of years, long before anyone could push a shopping cart beneath bright lights and wonder which brand of bread to choose. In the chapters ahead, we'll step into those fields, gardens, kitchens, and markets to discover exactly how ordinary people found enough to eat in a world where the supermarket had not yet been imagined. When we think about breakfast today, we usually picture a kitchen. Maybe someone is making toast. Maybe coffee is brewing. Maybe cereal is poured into a bowl while someone checks the weather on their phone. The meal begins inside the house, surrounded by cupboards full of food that was bought days earlier. For most ordinary people in history, breakfast actually began somewhere else. It began outside. Long before anyone stirred a pot over the fire, before bread was sliced or milk was poured into a cup, someone had already spent weeks or months making that food possible. Every meal started in the fields, the garden, the barn, or the pasture. The kitchen was simply the last stop on a very long journey. If you had visited a farming village around the year 1300, you would have noticed something almost immediately. Everyone worked. Not just the adults. Not just the strongest people. Nearly every member of the household had a job connected to food. A family was a team, and survival depended on everyone doing their part. As the first light appeared over the fields, people were already awake. Roosters may have announced the morning with great confidence, whether anyone wanted them to or not. Dogs stretched awake. Cows waited to be milked. Chickens wandered around the yard looking busy, even if nobody was quite sure what they were trying to accomplish. The day had started. Before breakfast could be enjoyed, many chores had to be finished. The cows needed milking while the air was still cool. Chickens had to be fed and eggs collected before clever little foxes decided to help themselves. Pigs needed scraps. Sheep were let out to graze. Horses, if a family was lucky enough to own one, had to be brushed, fed, and prepared for work. Animals were not just pets. They were walking food factories. Cows gave milk that could become butter or cheese. Chickens laid eggs. Sheep provided wool and sometimes meat. Goats supplied milk in places where cows were harder to keep. Even a single pig represented months of future meals if cared for properly. Of course, the animals expected payment. Their payment came in the form of endless attention. Feed them, water them, clean up after them, repeat tomorrow, and then repeat again for the rest of the year. Beyond the animals stretched the fields, where much of life's work took place. Depending on the season, farmers might be plowing, sowing seeds, pulling weeds, repairing fences, cutting hay, or harvesting crops. Every season brought a completely different list of jobs. Spring was full of hope. Seeds disappeared beneath the soil with no guarantee they would return as healthy plants. Every handful of grain planted was something that could have been eaten instead. Choosing to sow it required faith that the harvest would come months later. Summer became a race. Weeds grew quickly. Crops needed attention. Hay had to be cut before rain spoiled it. Gardens demanded almost daily care. People worked long hours because nature did not wait for anyone. Autumn was the reward, but also the busiest time of all. Fields filled with workers gathering grain. Children picked apples. Families dug up root vegetables. Everyone hurried because winter was getting closer every day. The harvest wasn't simply about today. It was about surviving until next year. Then winter arrived, bringing a different rhythm. The fields rested beneath frost or snow, but work never truly stopped. Tools were repaired. Firewood was chopped. Animals still needed care. Grain had to be ground. Food had to be stretched carefully through the cold months. The work simply moved indoors. One of the most important places around any home was the kitchen garden. Don't imagine a tiny patch with a few flowers and one lonely tomato plant. These gardens worked hard. Every corner produced something useful. Rows of onions stood beside cabbage. Beans climbed simple wooden poles. Peas spread across the soil. Leeks, garlic, parsley, sage, and other herbs filled small spaces wherever they could grow. Turnips and parsnips quietly waited underground. Nothing was planted just because it looked pretty. Every plant earned its place. Many families knew exactly how much food each part of the garden could provide. Experience passed from parents to children over generations. There were no gardening websites or online videos explaining when to plant beans. Your grandparents were the instruction manual. Children learned naturally by helping. A small child might gather herbs. Older children scared birds away from grain. Teenagers carried water buckets that always seemed heavier than they looked. Everyone learned useful skills almost without noticing. Even older family members who could no longer spend all day working the fields remained valuable. They cleaned vegetables, sorted seeds, watched young children, mended baskets, prepared food for storage, shared knowledge that could not be found in books. Years of experience often mattered just as much as strong muscles. Not every meal came from farming alone. Nature itself offered many useful foods. Nearby forests supplied berries when they were in season. Hazelnuts could be gathered in autumn. Wild mushrooms appeared after rain, although only people with good knowledge dared collect them. Choosing the wrong mushroom was a very memorable mistake, though usually only once. Rivers and lakes added another layer to the menu. Fishing could provide fresh meals or fish that were later dried or salted. Small streams often held trout. Larger rivers contained many different species depending on the region. Fishing required patience, but patience was a common part of life anyway. Some villages also gathered honey from wild bees or kept simple beehives. Honey was precious. Not only did it sweeten food, but it could also help preserve it. Since sugar remained rare and expensive for many centuries, honey was often the sweetest thing ordinary people regularly tasted. Fruit trees quietly did their part as well. An orchard was a long-term investment. Apple trees took years before producing large harvests, but once mature they rewarded families again and again. Pears, plums, cherries, and walnuts also appeared in different regions. When fruit finally ripened, there was little time to waste. Fresh fruit was enjoyed first. The rest was dried, stored, or turned into cider where local traditions allowed. Everything had a purpose. Nothing valuable was ignored. This close relationship with food meant people understood something we often forget today. Every meal represented hundreds of small tasks. Someone planted. Someone weeded. Someone watered. Someone milked. Someone carried. Someone chopped wood. Someone baked. Someone cooked. Even the simplest bowl of porridge depended on months of quiet effort that had begun long before sunrise. In many ways, breakfast was never just breakfast. It was the result of an entire family working together with the land through changing seasons, hoping that good weather, healthy animals, and a little bit of luck would carry them safely to the next harvest. And while today's breakfast might begin with opening the refrigerator door, theirs always began much earlier, with the first footsteps into damp fields as dawn slowly spread across the countryside.